This is James Lutton for Round 8 Boxing. Delighted to join with Thomas Treiber. Thomas, how are you?
I am fantastic. Just happy to be here in England. The first show of 2025 for Queensberry.
Absolutely. Derek Chisora, the last dance has been billed as with Otto Wallin. It's been built up very much, the Derek Chisora show. We saw that today was an extensive Q&A with the media here, and it seemed that every question was pointed at Derek. This is, like I say, very much Derek's big finale almost, although it's not his last fight. It's his last fight in the UK. For you, as a Master of Ceremonies, working with Queensberry, what's it like to work with characters like Derek Chisora?
Well, he is a character, and yesterday at the media workouts, he snuck up behind me and lifted me up from my waist. So yeah, he's a real character, but he's great for boxing. I mean, what a historic career he's had. He's never been a world champion, but he's fought a couple of times for a world title, and he's really fought some of the toughest fighters out there, and always a joy to watch him box.
Absolutely. We mentioned about characters, about Derek Chisora. Does it make that part of the job fun for you, where you come in and it's the unexpected? You never know what's going to happen when you come to work, but does that make it fun for you?
Absolutely. One of the great things about boxing has been all the different personalities and all the different characters that have come into the sport. So it certainly adds a little bit of extra flavor to an event. So super excited about the last dance, they're calling it. I know he wants to get to fight number 50 and call it quits there, but we'll have the honor of having that event here in Manchester on Saturday.
Absolutely. Thomas, let's talk about yourself. Let's go back a little bit. I want to go back to your bodybuilding days. I think it's in your teenage years you started bodybuilding. Talk to me about that and why you've done what you enjoyed about the competitive nature of bodybuilding.
Well, you know what? When I was about 13, 14 years old, a friend of mine and I bought a weightlifting set, and we were working out in our bedroom, and it was just something that grew on me, and I just became very passionate about the sport of bodybuilding, and it became a dream of mine to compete in bodybuilding. So I joined a gym in my hometown where there was a lot of competitive bodybuilders and athletes in other sports that worked out there. So it was a great place for me to learn, how to train properly, and I achieved that goal. Thankfully, in 1992, I competed in the Teenage Mr. Illinois bodybuilding competition. I ended up winning the overall of that competition and got to fulfill that dream that I had.
What was that like, that competitive nature and that feeling of winning?
It was a great feeling because, my goal was just to get on stage. I mean, first of all, I just wanted to compete. So then to actually win the competition was certainly an icing on the cake and a great memory.
For you, was it bodybuilders like Arnold Schwarzenegger, for example, who was your idols when you was growing up?
Oh, certainly Arnold Schwarzenegger was right up there at the top of the list. There was a very famous movie called Pumping Iron with him, Lou Ferrigno, Franco Columbu, many of Robbie Robinson. A lot of the great bodybuilders were in this documentary done in the late 70s, and I watched it probably 100 times. I had it on VHS tape at that time, and really admired Arnold for all of his achievements, and then of course parlaying that into an incredible movie career as well. So Arnold, definitely somebody I admired.
Now for you, obviously, you went from bodybuilding and then you transitioned through to sports entertainment and wrestling. Just to start off with how that came around. Was you a big wrestling fan? Was it always an ambition of yours?
Well, I was a big pro wrestling fan as a kid growing up. And at 17, I became a ring announcer for both boxing and professional wrestling events. So at 19, after competing in that bodybuilding competition, I was in very good shape. And I was approached by a wrestler from my hometown. I grew up in the Chicago area. And he said, "Hey, why don't you give wrestling a try?" And I thought, wow, I mean, that would be, an incredible thing to actually step through the ropes and wrestle, being that I was a big wrestling fan, and then I became a ring announcer. So I had that opportunity. After training, I started wrestling throughout the independent wrestling circuit in the Chicago area, and that's where I was spotted. I was spotted actually on a show in St. Louis, Missouri by a scout for World Championship Wrestling, WCW. I mean, at that time in the early 90s, they were the number 2 company next to the WWF, which is now WWE. And they approached me about doing enhancement work, or as some people refer to it as a jobber, and had an opportunity to wrestle for WCW. Some of my notable matches were against the Hollywood Blondes, which was stunning Steve Austin. He wasn't Stone Cold yet. He was stunning Steve Austin. And his tag team partner was Flying Brian Pillman. They were the Hollywood Blondes. Also wrestled in a tag team match against Ravishing Rick Rude, and also and his partner was the Equalizer. Wrestled a tag team called the Kongs, managed by Harley Race and a few others, and just a great opportunity to take my wrestling career to another level and wrestle for WCW. But I knew deep down announcing was really where I wanted to be, so after just a couple of years, I hung up the tights and grabbed the tux full time.
What was that like? You know, you've got in there, you've competed against guys who I'm sure you probably watched when you was growing up, like the Ravishing Rick Rude. Obviously, he was huge in the early 90s, late 80s. You've mentioned Harley Race, again, a huge figure in wrestling. What was it like to be able to get in the ring and work with these guys?
It was really surreal. I remember sitting in the locker room just kind of looking around and seeing all these guys that I had been watching. I mean, I was only 1 year out of high school, and I was watching wrestling, almost every day from the time I was 11, 12 years old. So it certainly was a dream come true, and very, very thankful that I had that opportunity. And I'm not surprised by the success of Stone Cold Steve Austin. He was, even at that time, he was very serious about learning the craft of becoming a professional wrestler. He had played some collegiate football before his wrestling days, but they were all great to work with, and very thankful for the opportunity I had.
I was going to ask you about Steve Austin. Could you tell from those early days that he would go on to achieve what he had achieved and be the success that he has?
Well, certainly you never know who's going to get that big break. I don't think anybody anticipated at that time the role he was going to play in the wrestling business. He still had his hair and so forth, but when he turned into that Stone Cold character, it was just perfect, and he nailed it. And I think, with the feud he had going on with Vince McMahon and the storylines, and at that time how the WWF, WWE, now Raw was really, taking it to another level. It was just a great time. That Attitude Era and all that was just a great time for wrestling and wrestling fans.
Does it show that in that industry that just one change of name, moniker, whether you go from a babyface to a heel, that can change your whole career in a click of a finger?
It really can. And I think that you'll find in most situations that usually the most successful characters in wrestling are usually an extension of perhaps their real type of personality, and just kind of an enhanced version of it. I've heard many stories, of course. Ric Flair would be probably the best example of outside the ring. He was always a very charismatic, partying kind of guy, and it was almost identical to his character in front of the camera. So, then there's also certain characters where, the heel wrestlers turn out to be the nicest guys you'll meet, backstage. So that's certainly not always the case, but I have seen where some of the great characters in wrestling were just an extension of their real personality.
In terms of, how can I put it, with boxing and wrestling, is there anything that you can sort of look at the two and compare and say they're very, very similar?
Well, one thing I love about is live crowds. In boxing and in wrestling, you're working in front of a live crowd, a live audience. I have worn other hats in broadcasting. I've worked in radio, I've worked in studios and things like that, but nothing beats working in front of a live crowd. And I think that's what I enjoyed the most, especially about working in the UK. And I'm almost 8 years into working for Frank Warren's Queensberry Promotions, which has been an unbelievable, surreal experience as a ring announcer. And I think, and of course, you've got characters similar to wrestling as well. We just saw Derek Chisora, he would make a great wrestling character. Tyson Fury, who actually has done a little bit of work with WWE as well. So Mike Tyson, Floyd Mayweather, there's been boxers who have also, crossed over into doing some stuff in professional wrestling. So, yeah, definitely some similarities.
And you mentioned obviously working 8 years with Queensberry Promotions and Frank Warren as a ring announcer. Just talk to me about that and your time with Frank Warren and Queensberry, and how has that been for you? What are your highlights? What are any pinch me moments?
Well, I would have to say the most recent pinch me moment would be Wembley Stadium. Anthony Joshua versus Daniel Dubois, close to 100,000 fans. I never imagined in my career when I started ring announcing in front of 25, 30 people on some small independent wrestling shows, I never thought that one day I would be performing in London, England, in front of that many people. So, the opportunity to work in arenas and stadiums, and now to be working the Riyadh season events and be working very closely with Michael Buffer the way that I have. What a unique opportunity. I mean, as a ring announcer, that is just an incredible opportunity to get to work with, my opinion, the greatest, most well-known ring announcer of all time, Michael Buffer. So many, many pinch me moments throughout my career thus far with Queensberry.
Did you think all those years ago when you started as an MC in boxing and in wrestling that you would get to here now where you are?
Absolutely not. I was just, you just take it day by day in this business, opportunity by opportunity. You just do the best you can with every opportunity. But unlike a lot of other professions where, you go to college, you get your degree, you get a headhunter, you find a job in that way. It doesn't work that way with ring announcing. But to any ring announcer out there, just, take it day by day, keep learning the trade. You never stop learning. Even at my level now, I'm still trying to better myself and become better and better every time I step through those ropes.
Fantastic. Thomas, thank you very much for your time. Real pleasure speaking to you. Thank you.
James, thank you very much. Big fan, round 8.